I didn't do anything wrong. They lied to you. You're all gonna regret this.
They laughed when she begged, until the ground beneath their feet cracked. Nivara's knees slammed against the cold stone of the pack courtyard, the impact sharp enough to sting through bone, but not enough to distract from the sound that mattered, the laughter. It echoed around her like something alive, cruel and hungry, bouncing off the towering wooden walls and iron torches that burned with a harsh, unforgiving glow. Dozens of wolves stood in a circle, their eyes gleaming with mockery, their scents thick with amusement and disgust. She could smell it all: spite, dominance, satisfaction. It made her stomach twist. Above them all, standing on the raised platform carved from dark oak, was Sareth, the alpha she had once trusted. The man who had once looked at her like she mattered. His expression now was carved from stone, cold and distant, as if she were nothing more than dirt clinging to his boot. Nivara lifted her head slowly, her silver-flecked eyes shining with unshed tears, her voice trembling but refusing to break completely. "Please," she whispered, her hands clenched tightly in the dirt. "I didn't do anything wrong." A sharp crack split the air as someone kicked her from behind, forcing her forward onto her palms. The scent of blood filled her nose instantly where her lips split against the stone. More laughter followed, louder this time. "Didn't do anything wrong," Kalen sneered, stepping into her line of sight. His tall frame blocked the firelight, casting a long shadow over her broken form. "You were born wrong, Omega." The word hit harder than the kick. Omega. Weak, useless, disposable. Nivara's wolf stirred faintly inside her, a quiet presence, always there but never strong enough to defend her. She had spent her whole life being reminded of that weakness, of the strange emptiness in her bond, of how she never shifted fully like the others. A curse, they called it. A flaw. She swallowed hard, tasting iron and forced herself to look up again, this time at Sareth. "You said you would protect me," she said, her voice cracking despite her effort. "You said I belonged here." For a moment, just a flicker, something moved in his eyes. Regret, or maybe guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "I was wrong," Sareth said flatly. His voice carried easily over the crowd, heavy with finality. "You don't belong in this pack." The words hit like a physical blow. Nivara felt something inside her chest splinter, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like something fragile finally giving up after being bent too many times. Around her, the pack shifted, anticipation rising. This was what they had all been waiting for: judgment, punishment, exile. Nivara's breathing grew uneven as panic crept in, cold and suffocating. She had nowhere to go, no family beyond these walls, no allies, no place in any other pack. Exile wasn't just rejection, it was a death sentence. Her fingers dug into the dirt as if she could anchor herself there, as if the earth itself might refuse to let her be cast out. "Please," she tried again, softer this time, weaker. "I'll do anything." The words tasted like ash, begging. Again, always begging. Then the scent hit her. It was sudden, violent, overpowering. Everything froze. The laughter, the whispers, even the wind seemed to still. Nivara's head snapped up, her body going rigid as something deep inside her, something she had never truly felt before, roared awake. Heat surged through her veins, sharp and electric, spreading from her chest outward like wildfire. Her heart slammed against her ribs, faster and faster, as if trying to break free. The scent wrapped around her senses, rich and intoxicating: smoke, pine, and something darker, something ancient. It didn't belong to anyone in the courtyard. That much she knew instantly. This was different. This was power. Raw, commanding, unquestionable. Her wolf, silent for years, surged forward in response, pressing against her mind with a force that made her gasp. A single word echoed in her thoughts, unfamiliar yet undeniable. "Mate." Nivara's breath hitched, her eyes widening in shock as she turned toward the pack gates. They creaked open slowly. And everything changed. The gates opened, and the laughter died like it had been strangled. Nivara remained on her knees, her breath uneven, her pulse still racing from the strange, overwhelming force that had just awakened inside her. Every wolf in the courtyard stiffened, their scents shifting instantly from mockery to fear, sharp and metallic in the air. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Then he stepped through. Valian. The name didn't need to be spoken. His presence alone declared it. Power rolled off him in waves, so heavy it pressed against Nivara's skin, making it hard to breathe. He moved slowly, deliberately, his boots echoing against the cracked stone as if the ground itself recognized him. Wolves lowered their heads without command, some dropping to their knees, unable to withstand the pressure of his aura. Nivara's chest tightened as her gaze locked onto him, her body reacting in ways she couldn't control. Heat surged through her veins again, stronger than before, wild and consuming. Her wolf, silent for years, pushed forward with sudden urgency, no longer weak, no longer distant. Mate. The word slammed into her mind, undeniable, terrifying. Her fingers trembled against the ground as she realized the truth. This man, this terrifying, powerful stranger, was hers. Valian's eyes found her instantly, as if nothing else in the world existed. The connection snapped into place with brutal force, invisible but suffocating, wrapping around Nivara's chest and pulling tight. She gasped softly, her heart racing as her body betrayed her, responding to him in ways that made no sense. But what she saw in his eyes shattered any fragile hope that might have formed. There was recognition, yes, but it wasn't warm. It wasn't gentle. It was sharp, controlled. And beneath it, something darker, anger, not directed outward, not at the pack, but at the bond itself. Nivara's stomach dropped as fear replaced the fragile spark inside her. This wasn't how mates were supposed to look at each other. This felt wrong, dangerous, like she had been tied to a storm that did not want her. Around them, the pack remained frozen, caught between curiosity and terror, unsure what this meant. Nivara swallowed hard, her lips trembling slightly as she forced herself to look away. But she couldn't. His presence held her in place, heavy and unrelenting, like gravity itself had shifted and she was trapped in its pull. "What is this?" Valian's voice cut through the silence, low and controlled, yet carrying enough power to make the air vibrate. Soreth stepped forward quickly, bowing his head, his earlier confidence gone. "Alpha King Valian, this is an internal. I did not ask what it required," Valian interrupted, his tone unchanged but somehow more dangerous. "I asked what it is." The tension snapped tighter, thick enough to suffocate. No one spoke for a moment until Kaelin stepped forward with a careless smirk, eager to regain control. "She's an Omega," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Useless, weak. The pack has decided to exile her." The words landed like stones, heavy and final, but Valian didn't react the way anyone expected. He didn't look at Kaelin. He didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, he took a step forward, then another. Each movement slow, deliberate, filled with a quiet kind of threat that made the wolves closest to him instinctively step back. Nivara's breath caught as he stopped just in front of her, close enough that his scent wrapped around her completely, overwhelming her senses. "Stand!" The command hit her like a force, not just heard but felt, pressing into her bones. Nivara gasped as her body responded instantly, her legs shaking as she pushed herself upright. Pain flared in her knees, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the way he was looking at her. Valian's gaze moved slowly over her, taking in every detail, the dirt, the blood, the trembling in her hands. Something dark shifted in his expression, subtle but unmistakable. "Who touched you?" he asked, his voice quieter now but far more dangerous. The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. No one answered. No one dared. Kaelin let out a short laugh, trying to break the tension. "She's an Omega. It doesn't—" The crack of impact came before anyone could react. Kaelin's body hit the ground hard, his jaw snapping to the side as Valian's strike sent him crashing into the stone. Gasps erupted across the courtyard, shock rippling through the crowd. Nivara flinched, her eyes widening, her heart pounding wildly. Valian didn't even look at the man he had just dropped. His focus never left her. "You are not theirs," Valian said, his voice low, controlled, final. The word sent a strange, terrifying warmth through Nivara's chest. Confusion twisted inside her. Battling against fear. "You do not belong to this pack." Silence followed, heavy and uncertain, before his next words shattered everything. "They cannot exile what is mine." The world seemed to stop. Nivara's breath caught, her mind struggling to process what she had just heard. "Mine." The word echoed in her head, loud and overwhelming, sending a wave of heat through her body. But before she could react, Soreth's voice cut in, strained and tense. "With respect, Alpha King, you don't understand," the ground cracked. A deep, violent tremor split through the courtyard, jagged lines tearing across the stone beneath their feet. Panic erupted as wolves stumbled back, fear finally breaking through their shock. Nivara's heart raced as she stared at the fractures spreading outward from where Valian stood. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just power. This was something else, something ancient, something dangerous. Valian's gaze returned to her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. And in that moment, Naivara realized the truth that made her blood run cold. Being rejected by her pack might not have been the worst thing that could happen to her. Being claimed by him might be. The courtyard still trembled long after the ground stopped moving, as if the earth itself remembered the force that had just passed through it. Naivara stood frozen where she was, her legs barely holding her up, her breath uneven as the weight of everything pressed down on her at once. The words still echoed in her mind, mine, over and over, louder than the panicked murmurs now rising around them. Wolves backed away cautiously, their earlier arrogance gone, replaced with something raw and instinctive. Fear. Not of Naivara, but of him. Valian didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even glance at the chaos unfolding around him. His presence alone held the entire pack in place, like prey caught in the gaze of something far more dangerous than any predator they had ever known. Naivara swallowed hard, her chest tight as her wolf stirred again, restless and alive in a way it had never been before. It pressed toward him, drawn, desperate, as if it had been waiting its entire existence for this moment. But Naivara wasn't ready. She didn't understand. And worst of all, she didn't feel safe. Because the way Valian looked at her, it wasn't the way someone looked at something they cherished. It was the way someone looked at a problem they hadn't decided how to solve. Soreth stepped forward again, more carefully this time, his posture rigid with tension. "Alpha King," he said, his voice controlled but strained beneath the surface. "You are mistaken. She is nothing. A defective Omega. She has no place here or anywhere." The words hit Naivara like a slap, even now, even after everything. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, nails biting into her palms as she fought the instinct to shrink again. But something stopped her this time, something unfamiliar. A quiet resistance rising from deep within her chest. Valian's gaze shifted slowly to Soreth, and the temperature in the air seemed to drop instantly. "Nothing," he repeated, his tone soft, almost curious, but there was something dangerous beneath it, something coiled tight and ready to strike. Soreth hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "She cannot shift properly. She has no strength, no rank, no value to the pack." Each word was deliberate, calculated, meant to justify what they had done. What they were about to do. Naivara's throat tightened, but she didn't speak. She couldn't, because a part of her still believed it. Valian was silent for a long moment. Then he took a step closer. Not toward Naivara. Toward Soreth. The movement alone was enough to make several wolves flinch, their instincts screaming at them to create distance. Valian stopped just in front of the platform, his gaze locking onto Soreth with quiet intensity. "If she is nothing," he said slowly, "then why does your entire pack smell like fear?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Soreth's jaw tightened, his control slipping for the first time. "We do not fear her," he replied quickly. "You fear what you did to her," Valian corrected, his voice dropping lower. The words struck deeper than any accusation. A ripple moved through the crowd, subtle but undeniable. Unease, guilt, something they couldn't hide from him. Naivara's heart pounded as confusion twisted tighter inside her. What did he mean? What had they done? Her gaze flickered around the courtyard, searching faces, looking for answers, but all she saw were wolves refusing to meet her eyes, avoidance, shame, and something else, regret. A cold feeling settled in her chest as a realization began to form, fragile but terrifying. There was something they weren't telling her, something they had hidden for years. "You should leave," Soreth said suddenly, his tone sharper now, more desperate. "This does not concern you." The moment the words left his mouth, the air shifted again, heavier, darker, suffocating. Valian didn't move, didn't react immediately, but Naivara felt it, the change in him, subtle but powerful, like a storm building just beneath the surface. "Everything that belongs to me concerns me," he said finally. The statement was simple, absolute, unchallengeable. Naivara's breath caught again, her heart racing as those words settled deep inside her chest. But before anyone could respond, another voice broke through the tension. "He doesn't know." It was quiet, hesitant, but loud enough to cut through the silence. All eyes turned. An older wolf stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, his movements slow, cautious. Uncle Martin's. Naivara's chest tightened at the sight of him, the only one who had ever shown her even a hint of kindness growing up. His eyes met hers briefly, filled with something heavy, something that made her stomach drop, before he turned to Valian. "She was not born weak," he said, his voice steady despite the tension surrounding him. "She was made that way." The words hit like a thunderclap. Nivara's world tilted. "What?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper, fragile and disbelieving. Made, her mind struggled to process it, to understand what that could possibly mean. Valian's gaze snapped toward Martin's, sharp and focused, every trace of stillness gone. "Explain," he ordered. Martins hesitated, glancing briefly at Sareth, whose expression had darkened dangerously. The silent warning was clear: don't. But Martins looked back at Nivara instead, and chose anyway. "The night she was born," he began, his voice heavy with truth long buried. "There was power in her, too much power, the kind that threatens balance. The elders feared it." Nivara's heart pounded harder with every word, her breath coming faster, panic rising in her chest. "So they suppressed it," Martins continued. "They sealed her wolf before it could fully awaken." Silence followed, crushing, absolute. Nivara staggered slightly, her legs weakening beneath her as the truth crashed into her. All those years. All the weakness, the shame, the rejection, it wasn't natural. It wasn't her fault. It was them. Her gaze snapped toward Sareth, her eyes wide with betrayal, something sharp and burning rising in her chest for the first time. Not sadness, not fear, something else. Anger. But before she could speak, before she could even breathe, a new scent hit the air. Sharp, metallic, deadly. Valian's head turned instantly toward the forest beyond the gates, his entire body going still. Then, low, cold, certain, they found her. Nivara's blood ran cold. Because whatever they were coming. The scent hit before the sound, sharp, metallic, wrong, and every instinct in Nivara's body screamed danger. The forest beyond the gates, once still, now pulsed with something alive, something watching. The wolves in the courtyard shifted uneasily, their earlier fear of Valian replaced with something more immediate, more primal. Even the strongest among them stepped back, their gazes darting toward the tree line as if expecting it to move. Nivara's chest tightened as her senses sharpened unnaturally, her wolf no longer quiet but alert, coiled tight beneath her skin. She could feel them, not see, but feel. Multiple presences, fast, controlled, closing in. Valian stood still beside her, but the air around him had changed again, colder now, heavier, like the calm before something violent. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low but absolute. The command wrapped around her instincts, anchoring her in place even as fear tried to pull her back. Nivara swallowed hard, her heart racing as the truth settled in. Whatever was coming, it wasn't here for the pack. It was here for her. The first scream tore through the silence. It came from the outer guards. Then another. And another. Chaos erupted instantly as wolves scrambled toward the gates, shifting mid-run, bones cracking, fur bursting through skin as panic took over discipline. The air filled with snarls and the sickening scent of blood, thick and fresh, spreading too quickly. Nivara flinched, her body reacting before her mind could process, her instincts screaming at her to run, but her legs refused to move. She was rooted in place, trapped between terror and something stronger holding her there. Then the first body flew through the gates. It hit the stone hard, unmoving, eyes wide and lifeless. A collective gasp rippled through the courtyard. Nivara's breath hitched, her stomach twisting violently as she stared at the fallen wolf. This wasn't a fight. This was a slaughter. Shapes moved in the shadows beyond the gates, fast and unnatural, their presence wrong in a way that made her skin crawl. Not wolves, not entirely. Something twisted, something that didn't belong. "They're not rogues," Valian said quietly. The statement sent a ripple of unease through the remaining wolves. Because if they weren't rogues, then what were they? The answer came with the next attack. They moved like shadows given form, figures slipping through the gates faster than the eye could follow, their bodies shifting between wolf and something else, something distorted. Their eyes glowed an unnatural red, their movements too sharp, too precise. One lunged forward, faster than any wolf Nivara had ever seen, tearing through a guard before anyone could react. Blood sprayed across the stone. Screams followed. The courtyard descended into chaos as wolves fought back, but it wasn't enough. These creatures didn't hesitate, didn't falter. They moved with purpose, with intent. Nivara stumbled back slightly, her breath coming faster as fear clawed up her throat. Her wolf pressed forward again, not in defense, but in warning, danger. Something deeper than instinct told her the truth before her mind could catch up. They weren't just attacking the pack. They were searching, hunting, for something specific, for someone specific. For her. Stay close, Valian said again, sharper this time. And then he moved. It wasn't like anything Nivara had ever seen. 1 second he was beside her. The next he was gone. A blur of motion, power unleashed. The ground cracked beneath his feet as he struck, his movements too fast, too precise, his strength overwhelming. One of the creatures lunged toward him, claws extended, but it never reached him. Valian caught it midair, his grip crushing, and slammed it into the ground with a force that shattered stone. The impact echoed like thunder. The creature twitched once, then went still. Another attacked from behind. Valian didn't turn, didn't hesitate. His arm snapped back, catching it by the throat, lifting it effortlessly before snapping its neck with a single, brutal motion. Nivara stared, frozen, her fear momentarily replaced by something else. This wasn't a fight. It was domination, absolute, unquestionable. But even as he moved through them, taking them down one by one, more kept coming. Too many, endless. And for the first time since he arrived, Valian's expression shifted. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Recognition. They shouldn't be here, he muttered. And that was worse. Because it meant this wasn't random. This was planned. The realization hit Nivara like ice in her veins. Her gaze snapped toward the forest again, her heart pounding harder as a new presence emerged slowly from the shadows. Unlike the others, this one didn't rush. Didn't attack. It walked. Calm, controlled. Watching. The creatures around it seemed to hesitate slightly, as if acknowledging something stronger, something higher in command. Nivara's breath caught as it stepped into the light, its form shifting unnaturally between human and wolf, never settling, never stable. Its eyes locked onto hers instantly, and it smiled. A slow, knowing smile that made her blood run cold. "There you are," it said, its voice distorted, layered with something inhuman. Nivara's body went rigid as dread settled deep in her chest. It knew her, not just by scent, by sight, by identity. Valian appeared in front of her again instantly, placing himself between them, his presence shielding her completely. But the creature didn't react with fear. It laughed instead. "You're too late," it said softly. "She was never meant to belong to you." The words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Nivara's breath trembled as confusion and fear twisted together inside her. What did that mean? Before she could think, before she could speak, the creature's gaze sharpened, its smile fatting into something colder. "She belongs to us." And suddenly, everything made terrifying sense. The words didn't just hang in the air. They sank into Nivara's bones, cold and suffocating, as if something ancient had just spoken a truth she was never meant to hear. "She belongs to us." Her breath came shallow, uneven, her chest tightening as her wolf reacted violently inside her, no longer restless, but resisting, rejecting. The presence before her felt wrong in a way she couldn't explain, like a corrupted echo of something that should not exist. Around them, the courtyard burned with chaos, wolves clashing, bodies falling, blood staining the cracked stone. But all of it faded into the background, because the creature's eyes never left her. And worse, hers couldn't leave it either. Valian stepped forward slightly, placing himself fully between Nivara and the thing, his shoulders squared, his presence expanding like a wall of iron. "You don't get to claim what you failed to protect," he said, his voice low, controlled, but carrying a sharp edge that cut through the noise of battle. The creature tilted its head, almost amused, its shifting form flickering unnaturally between shapes. "Protect," it echoed softly, its distorted voice layered with mockery. "We didn't fail, we were patient." Nivara's heart slammed harder against her ribs as confusion twisted deeper into fear. Patient. Her mind raced, trying to connect the fragments. What Martins had said, what Valian had implied, what this thing clearly knew. None of it made sense, yet all of it felt connected. The creature took a slow step forward, ignoring Valian entirely now, its attention fixed solely on her as if he were nothing more than an obstacle. "Do you know what you are?" it asked, its voice quieter now, almost curious. The question hit harder than any threat. Nivara's lips parted slightly, but no answer came, because she didn't know. Not anymore. Not after everything she had just learned. Her entire life had been built on a lie, and now something far worse was stepping in to replace it. The creature smiled again, whiter this time, revealing teeth too sharp, too wrong. "Of course you don't," it continued. "They made sure of that." Its gaze flickered briefly toward the pack, and for the first time, Nivara noticed something chilling in the expressions of the older wolves. Not just fear. Guilt. Deep, rotting guilt. "They crippled you," the creature said softly, almost gently. "Bound your wolf, silenced your blood, all to keep control of something they didn't understand." Nivara staggered slightly, her breath catching as the words struck deep, echoing everything Martins had revealed, but this felt different. More complete. More dangerous. Her hands trembled at her sides as heat began to build again beneath her skin, stronger than before, sharper, like something clawing to break free. "Stop," she whispered, but the creature only stepped closer, its smile widening. "You feel it, don't you?" it pressed. "That power waking up." Nivara gasped as a sudden surge tore through her chest, her wolf slamming against whatever had held it back for years. Pain followed instantly, raw, blinding, overwhelming. She dropped to one knee, clutching her chest as a cry tore from her throat, her entire body shaking under the force of it. The world around her blurred, sounds distorting, stretching, warping as something inside her cracked. Not physically, but something deeper. Something that had been locked away for far too long. "Enough," Valian's voice cut through everything, sharp and absolute. Power surged outward from him in a violent wave. The ground split again beneath his feet, the force pushing back the creatures surrounding them, buying space, buying time. Nivara barely registered it, her focus consumed by the pain tearing through her as something inside her began to break free. It felt like fire in her veins, like lightning striking from the inside out, uncontrollable and wild. Her wolf was no longer quiet. It roared, loud, furious, alive. Not weak. Never weak. The realization slammed into her through the haze of pain. She had never been broken. She had been suppressed. Her nails dug into the stone as her breathing grew ragged, her vision flickering between clarity and darkness. "You're waking her too soon," Valian said, his tone colder now, his body tense as he stood between her and the creature. "She's not ready." The creature's laughter was low, distorted. "Satisfied? She was never meant to be ready," it replied. "She was meant to be claimed." Its gaze sharpened again, locking onto Nivara with terrifying intent. "And now that she's awake," it took another step forward, ignoring the danger radiating from Valian entirely. "We're not leaving without her." Nivara screamed. The sound tore through the battlefield, raw and unrestrained, as the last barrier inside her shattered completely. Power exploded outward from her body in a violent surge, the force strong enough to knock nearby wolves off their feet. The air itself seemed to ripple, bending under the pressure of something ancient, something long buried now breaking free. Nivara collapsed forward, her hands slamming against the ground as her body shook uncontrollably, her senses overwhelmed. She could hear everything. Every heartbeat, every movement, every breath, it was too much, too loud, too intense. And yet beneath the chaos she felt something else, something guiding, something calling, not from the creatures, not from the pack, from him, Valian. The bond between them pulsed stronger now, no longer fragile or uncertain, but undeniable, solid, real. His presence cut through the storm inside her, grounding her just enough to keep her from losing herself completely. But the creature saw it too. Its expression darkened slightly, its amusement fatting into something colder. "There it is," it murmured. "The bloodline we've been waiting for." Nivara's head lifted slowly, her vision still blurred, but sharpening just enough to see the truth in its eyes. Not curiosity. Not confusion. Certainty. And that terrified her more than anything. Because whatever she was, whatever power had just awakened inside her, it wasn't just rare. It was hunted. It was wanted. It was dangerous. Valian's hand moved suddenly, gripping her arm firmly, pulling her slightly behind him as his voice dropped into something far more serious than before. "We're leaving," he said. Not to the pack. To her. But before Nivara could react, before she could even understand what that meant. The creature smiled again and lifted its hand. The forest behind it moved. Not with shadows, not with wolves, but with dozens, more of those twisted, unnatural things emerging all at once. An army. Waiting. Watching. And now, advancing. The moment the forest moved, Nivara felt it like a shift in the world itself, like something ancient had just turned its full attention toward her. Dozens of those twisted creatures stepped out from the shadows, their glowing eyes locking onto her with terrifying precision, their movements too synchronized to be instinctive. This wasn't chaos. This was coordination, a hunt. Nivara's breath hitched as her newly awakened senses stretched beyond what she could control, pulling in every sound, every scent, every heartbeat at once. It was overwhelming, suffocating, like drowning in noise and power she didn't understand. Her wolf surged violently beneath her skin, no longer contained, no longer suppressed, pushing against her mind with desperate urgency. Run. Fight. Survive. The instincts clashed, tearing through her thoughts as her body trembled under the weight of it. Valian stood in front of her, unmoving, his presence expanding again, darker now, heavier, like something vast had awakened inside him in response. "Do not let go of me," he said quietly, but there was no room for disobedience in his tone. Nivara swallowed hard, fear tightening her chest as she nodded instinctively, her fingers trembling as they gripped the fabric of his sleeve. "They're not here to kill her," Valian continued, his gaze locked on the approaching figures, calculating, sharp. "They're here to take her." The realization sent a cold wave through Nivara's body, sharper than fear, deeper than panic, because death would have been simple, quick, final, but this meant something else, something worse. The creature that had spoken earlier stepped forward again, now flanked by the others, its shifting form flickering more violently as if struggling to contain itself. "You cannot stop this," it said, its voice layered and distorted, echoing unnaturally across the courtyard. "She was marked long before you found her." Nivara's grip tightened on Valian as confusion spiked again. Marked. Her mind raced, trying to piece together truths that refused to settle into anything clear. But Valian didn't respond immediately. His body tensed instead, his stance shifting subtly as if preparing for something far more dangerous than a simple fight. "When I say run," he said under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear, "you run, do not look back, do not stop." Nivara's heart slammed harder at the command, fear rising sharply. "What about you?" "Run," he repeated, sharper this time. The first wave hit without warning. They moved all at once. Vast. Too fast. Nivara barely saw them coming before Valian surged forward, his power exploding outward in a violent shockwave that met them head-on. The collision cracked the air itself, the force throwing several creatures back, but more pushed through, relentless, unyielding. The courtyard became a storm of movement, claws, teeth, power colliding in flashes too quick to follow. Nivara stumbled backward, her breath ragged as her instincts screamed at her to move, to run, to survive, but her body hesitated. Because he was still there, fighting, holding them back for her. The realization hit deep, twisting something in her chest as fear mixed with something else, something warmer, sharper, more dangerous. The bond between them pulsed again, stronger now, pulling at her with undeniable force. She could feel him, his strength, his focus, his control, but also something else. Strain, not weakness, never that, but pressure. Even he couldn't hold back this many alone forever. "Run." Valian's voice tore through the chaos, louder now, commanding, absolute. Nivara turned. And ran. Her legs moved before her mind could catch up, her body reacting purely on instinct as she pushed forward, away from the courtyard, away from the chaos, toward the forest beyond. The world blurred around her as her heightened senses struggled to keep up, every sound amplified, every movement too sharp, too real. Branches snapped under her feet as she moved, her breath coming fast and uneven, her heart pounding wildly against her ribs. But even as she ran, she could still feel it, the bond, pulling, stretching, connecting her to him like an invisible thread that refused to break. And then pain. Sharp. Sudden. Nivara gasped as something slammed into her back, sending her crashing forward into the dirt. The impact knocked the air from her lungs as she struggled to push herself up, panic surging instantly. One of them had broken through. Its weight pressed down on her, claws digging into the ground beside her head, its distorted breath hot against her neck. "You cannot run from what you are," it whispered, its voice twisted with something close to satisfaction. Nivara's body reacted before fear could take over. Something inside her snapped. Not painfully, not violently, but decisively. The fear, the hesitation, the confusion. It didn't disappear. It hardened, changed. Her wolf surged forward fully this time, no longer restrained, no longer weak, no longer silent. Power flooded her veins, raw and unfiltered, stronger than anything she had ever felt before. Her eyes flashed, her body tensing as instinct took control. The creature above her froze for half a second, just long enough. Nivara moved. Fast. Her hand shot upward, gripping its throat with a strength that shouldn't have been possible, her fingers tightening as something deep inside her guided the motion. The creature's eyes widened, surprise flashing across its twisted face. Then crack, its body went limp instantly. Silence followed. Nivara stared at it for a moment, her breath shaking, her hand still locked around its throat as realization hit. She had done that, not by accident, not by luck, by power, real power. Her chest rose and fell unevenly as she slowly released it, her gaze lifting toward the forest again. And that's when she realized. They weren't chasing blindly anymore. They were circling, hurting her, driving her somewhere. Nivara's breath hitched as dread settled deep in her chest, her instinct screaming louder than ever before. This wasn't an escape. It was a path, and she had just run exactly where they wanted her to go. The forest changed before Nivara fully realized she had crossed into it. The air grew colder, heavier, carrying a scent that didn't belong to the living, damp earth, old stone, and something faintly rotten beneath it. Her steps slowed despite her racing heart, her instincts clashing violently inside her. Every part of her screamed to turn back, but something deeper, something newly awakened, pulled her forward like an invisible thread tightening around her chest. The trees here stood taller, closer together. Their branches twisting unnaturally as if trying to block out the sky. Even the sounds of the night had faded. No insects, no wind, just silence. Nivara swallowed hard, her breath visible now in the cold air as she stepped further in, her senses stretching outward, searching for danger. And finding too much of it. They were still there, moving, watching, but not attacking, not yet. That realization settled uneasily in her chest. This wasn't a chase anymore, it was control. They were guiding her, leading her somewhere specific, somewhere they had already chosen, somewhere they expected her to reach. Behind her, the distant sounds of battle had faded completely. Valian. The bond between them still pulsed, but weaker now, stretched thin like something being pulled too far. Nivara's chest tightened at the sensation, a sharp ache forming beneath her ribs as fear crept in. Not just for herself, but for him. She could still feel him, faint but present, like a distant echo in her mind. Alive, fighting, but far, too far. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides as hesitation crept in for the first time since she started running. She could turn back, try to reach him. But the moment the thought formed, her wolf reacted sharply no. The response was immediate, instinctive, absolute, forward. The command wasn't his, it wasn't the creature's. It came from within her, from something older, something that felt certain. Nivara exhaled slowly, steadying herself despite the fear tightening her chest. "Fine," she whispered under her breath, her voice trembling slightly. "Then we go forward." The decision settled heavily in her bones, irreversible the moment it was made. The trees parted suddenly. Not naturally. Like something had pushed them aside long ago, and they had never fully returned. Nivara stepped into the clearing and froze. The ground beneath her feet wasn't forest soil anymore. It was stone, ancient, cracked, covered in symbols carved deep into its surface, worn by time but still visible enough to feel wrong just by looking at them. At the center of the clearing stood a structure, half ruined, half standing, its dark stone walls jagged and uneven as if something had tried to destroy it and failed. Or stopped halfway. The air here was different. Thicker, charged. It pressed against her skin, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. Nivara's heart pounded as her gaze moved slowly across the clearing, taking in every detail, every unnatural line, every shadow that didn't seem to belong. Her wolf stirred again, but not in warning this time. Recognition. The feeling hit her so suddenly it made her stagger slightly. "No," she whispered, confusion flooding her chest. She had never been here, never seen this place, and yet something inside her knew it. Knew what it was, or at least what it had been. You made it. The voice came from behind her. Calm. Certain. Nivara turned slowly, her body already tensing as the creature stepped into the clearing, its form flickering again between shapes, never stable, never right. But now, up close, she could see more. Not just the distortion, but the control behind it. This one wasn't like the others. It wasn't mindless. It wasn't driven by instinct. It was aware, intelligent, and watching her like she was something it had been waiting for. Do you feel it? It asked, tilting its head slightly, its glowing eyes scanning her carefully. This place, it remembers you. Nivara's breath caught, her chest tightening as the strange sense of familiarity deepened, pressing against her thoughts in a way that made her head ache. I've never been here, she said quickly, her voice sharper than she expected, as if denying it might make the feeling go away. The creature smiled faintly, something knowing and unsettling in the expression. Not in this life, it replied. The words hit harder than anything else. Nivara's mind reeled, confusion crashing into fear, into something deeper she couldn't name. What are you talking about? She demanded, her voice shaking despite the strength she tried to force into it. The creature stepped closer, but slowly this time, without aggression, without threat. You think your story began with that pack? It asked softly. With their cruelty, their fear. It shook its head slightly, almost pitying. No, your story began long before that. Nivara's chest tightened painfully as fragments of something flickered at the edges of her mind, images too fast to grasp, sensations that didn't belong to her memories but felt real enough to make her dizzy. Fire, stone, voices, power, too much power. She staggered back slightly, her breath uneven. Stop, she whispered, clutching her head as the pressure built. The creature didn't stop. You were never meant to live a small life, it continued, its voice lowering, deepening. You were never meant to be weak. You were born from a bloodline that does not serve alphas. It destroys them. Nivara's heart stopped. For a second. Just one. Because the truth in its voice felt real. You don't belong to him, the creature added, its gaze sharpening. That bond, it's a mistake, an interference. The words twisted something inside her chest, sharp and painful, clashing violently with the pull she still felt toward Valian, even now, even from this distance. You belong to us, it said again, softer this time, more certain. To what you truly are. Nivara's breathing grew heavier as the pressure inside her built to something unbearable, her wolf reacting again, not in agreement, not in submission, but in conflict. Because part of her rejected it, fought it, but another part listened. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The creature raised its hand slowly, the air around it distorting as something dark gathered at its fingertips. Come, it said. Nivara didn't move. Couldn't. Because deep inside her, something was starting to answer. The word come didn't sound like a command, it felt like one. It pressed into Nivara's mind, slipping past her thoughts, wrapping around something deeper, something older than fear. Her body swayed slightly, her breath uneven as her senses blurred at the edges. The clearing seemed to pulse with the same rhythm now, the carved symbols beneath her feet faintly glowing as if reacting to her presence. Her wolf stirred again, but this time not with panic, not with warning, with resistance. Strong, fierce, defiant. The two forces inside her collided, one pulling her forward toward the creature, toward the unknown truth it promised, and the other anchoring her in place, holding her back with a grip just as powerful. Nivara's fingers curled tightly into her palms as her heart raced, her chest rising and falling in sharp, uneven breaths. No, she whispered, her voice trembling under the weight of it. But the pressure didn't stop. It grew, stronger, deeper. Reaching into her bones, as if trying to pull her apart from the inside. You feel it, the creature said softly, its voice almost soothing now, patient, certain. That is who you are, not what they made you. It took another slow step closer, the air around it distorting again, bending unnaturally. You were never meant to kneel, you were meant to rise, and when you do, nothing will stand above you. The words wrapped around her thoughts, dangerous in how right they sounded. Nivara's chest tightened, her mind flashing with memories. Every moment of humiliation, every insult, every time she had been told she was nothing. Weak, useless, disposable. The anger that had begun to form earlier surged again, hotter now, sharper, feeding into the pressure building inside her. The symbols beneath her feet flickered brighter for a second, reacting, responding. "They feared you," the creature continued, its eyes glowing brighter. "That is why they broke you. That is why they hid you. But we have been waiting." Nivara's breath hitched as something inside her leaned toward that truth, dangerously close to accepting it. Then, pain. Sharp. Sudden. It tore through her chest, like something snapping back into place. Nivara gasped, her body jerking as the bond surged violently, the connection to Valian flaring stronger than it had since she left him. Not distant anymore, not fatting, close, too close. The force of it slammed into her, drowning out the creature's influence, breaking its hold just enough for her to think again. To feel again, not its pull, but his, strong, unyielding, real. Her head snapped up, her breathing ragged as the invisible thread between them tightened sharply, no longer stretched thin, but pulling, calling. The creature's expression shifted instantly, its calm slipping into something darker, something irritated. "He's interfering," it said quietly, more to itself than to her. "Of course he is." Nivara stumbled back a step, her hand clutching her chest as the bond pulsed again, grounding her, anchoring her in something solid, something safe. The contrast hit her hard. One pull felt like losing herself. The other felt like being found. A roar split the forest. Deep. Powerful. Familiar. Nivara's heart jumped as the sound tore through the clearing, the ground beneath her vibrating slightly from the force of it. Valian. The recognition hit instantly, her wolf surging forward in response, no hesitation this time. The bond flared brighter, stronger, guiding her senses toward him even before he appeared. The creature turned sharply toward the edge of the clearing, its expression darkening further as the air shifted again, this time not with corruption, but with dominance. Real dominance. The kind that didn't twist or distort, the kind that commanded. Then he stepped into the clearing. Valian's presence hit like a storm breaking through silence, raw and overwhelming, his golden eyes locked instantly onto Nivara. Relief flickered in them, brief, controlled, but there. He was covered in blood, not all of it his breathing steady but heavier than before. He had fought through them, all of them, and still came for her. "You crossed into ground you should not have entered," Valian said, his voice low, dangerous, directed at the creature. But his eyes never left Nivara. "And you touched what belongs to me." The creature let out a soft, amused sound, though the tension in its form betrayed it. "You misunderstand Alpha King," it replied smoothly. "She was never yours to begin with." Nivara's chest tightened at the words, her gaze flickering between them as the conflict inside her surged again, sharper now, more intense. Because both of them spoke with certainty. Both of them believed they were right, and she didn't know who to believe. Valian stepped forward slightly, his power expanding again, pushing against the unnatural energy filling the clearing. "You've said enough," he said coldly. "Leave, now." The command carried weight, real authority, but the creature didn't move. Instead, it smiled. Slow. Knowing. "You feel it, don't you?" it said softly, looking directly at Nivara again, ignoring Valian completely. That pull, that power, that truth. Nivara's breath hitched as the pressure returned, weaker now, but still there, still tempting, still dangerous. "He is holding you back," the creature continued, "binding you to something smaller than what you are meant to become." Valian's jaw tightened slightly, the only sign of his reaction. "Enough," he said again, sharper this time, but Nivara didn't move toward him. Not yet, because the creature's words had planted something inside her, something that refused to be ignored. What if it was right? What if the bond was holding her back? The thought alone felt wrong, and yet it lingered. The creature raised its hand again. The air shifted. The symbols beneath Nivara's feet flared to life. This time, she didn't just feel it. She responded. Power surged outward from her body instinctively, raw and unfiltered, clashing violently with the energy rising from the ground. The impact sent a shockwave through the clearing, forcing both Valian and the creature to step back slightly. Nivara gasped, her eyes widening as the force spilled out of her without control, without restraint. It wasn't just strength. It was something deeper, older, dangerous. The clearing reacted, stones cracking further, symbols burning brighter, the air itself distorting under the pressure. Valian's gaze sharpened instantly, something serious flickering beneath his control. "Nivara," he said, his voice lower now, more focused. "Stop!" But she couldn't, not fully, because for the first time she wasn't just reacting. She was choosing. And as the power surged again, stronger than before, the creature's smile widened. Because whatever she decided next would change everything. The power didn't fade, it grew. It surged through Nivara like something alive, something that had waited too long to finally be free. The symbols beneath her feet burned brighter, their glow crawling up the cracks in the stone like veins of light, feeding into her, amplifying what was already spilling out. Her breath came in sharp bursts as her body struggled to contain it, her fingers trembling as the energy pulsed uncontrollably from her core. The forest around the clearing seemed to recoil, the trees groaning softly as if reacting to her presence. She could feel everything now, the ground, the air, the movement of every creature nearby. Too much, far too much. And yet it didn't feel wrong. It felt powerful. The creature watched her with quiet satisfaction, its eyes glowing brighter as if reflecting the same energy she carried. "Yes," it whispered, almost reverent. "That is what you are." Nivara's chest tightened as the words settled deeper this time, not rejected immediately, not dismissed. Because the power didn't feel like something foreign anymore. It felt like something that had always been hers. "Nivara!" Valian's voice cut through the storm again, sharper now, commanding, but not just that. There was something else in it, urgency, not fear, but close enough to make her hesitate. Her gaze flickered toward him, her vision still distorted by the overwhelming force inside her. He stood firm despite the pressure radiating from her, his golden eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that refused to break. "Look at me," he said, quieter this time, but stronger. The bond between them pulsed again, pulling at her, grounding her just enough to make her focus. Nivara's breathing slowed slightly, her thoughts clearing just enough to see him clearly again. Not as an obstacle, not as a force holding her back, but as something real, something steady. The chaos inside her faltered for a moment, just a moment, but it was enough. "You're losing yourself," Valian said, his voice low, controlled, but firm. "That power isn't meant to control you, you control it." The words hit differently than the creature. Not tempting, not seductive, but anchoring, solid, true in a way that felt safer. The creature's expression darkened instantly. "He lies," it said sharply, its voice losing that calm edge for the first time. "That bond is weakening you, blinding you." It stepped forward again, faster now, its form flickering more violently as the tension in the air spiked. "You were not made to stand beside an alpha," it continued, its voice rising slightly. "You were made to stand above them." The words struck like sparks against dry flame, igniting the anger still burning inside Nivara. Above them, not beneath, not rejected, not weak. The power inside her surged again in response, feeding off that emotion, amplifying it. The symbols beneath her feet flared brighter, the ground cracking further under the pressure. Nivara gasped as the force pushed outward again, stronger this time, harder to control. Valian didn't move, but his gaze sharpened, something dangerous flickering beneath his calm. "That path ends with you alone," he said, his voice cutting clean through the noise. "Controlled, used just like before." The words hit deeper than the creatures had, not because they were louder, but because they struck something real. Nivara's chest tightened painfully. Because she had already been controlled once. Already been used. Already been broken. Her breath shook as the two forces inside her collided again, one promising power without limits, the other offering something quieter but real. The bond pulsed again, stronger now, pulling her back from the edge she hadn't even realized she was standing on. But the creature saw it, and it reacted instantly. "Then break it," it snapped, its voice sharp, desperate now. "Sever the bond, take what is yours without restraint." The words hit like a final push, a challenge, a temptation wrapped in certainty. Nivara's breath caught as the idea took hold. Break it. End the pull. End the confusion. End the weakness. The power inside her surged violently in response, reacting to the thought itself, ready to act, ready to obey. Her hand lifted slightly, trembling as the energy gathered again, stronger than before, unstable, dangerous. Valian didn't move, didn't step back, didn't defend himself. He just looked at her. "If you do this," he said quietly, "you don't just lose me." His voice lowered further. "You lose yourself." Silence fell. Heavy. Unbearable. Nivara's hand trembled as the power built, crackling at her fingertips, waiting for her to decide. The creature's eyes burned with anticipation, its entire body tense, ready. Valian remained still, his gaze unwavering, his trust unbroken. The bond pulsed one more time, steady and strong, cutting through the chaos just enough to remind her of what it felt like. Not power, not control. Connection. Choice. Nivara's breath shook as tears blurred her vision, the weight of everything pressing down on her at once. The past, the truth, the fear, the power, and the choice. Slowly, painfully, her hand lowered, the energy flickered. Unstable for a second, then collapsed inward, fatting just enough to stop. The creature froze. Its expression shifted from anticipation to disbelief. "No," it whispered. Nivara's gaze lifted, steady now despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "I'm done being controlled," she said, her voice quiet but certain. "By anyone." The clearing went still. Completely. Because the moment she made that choice, something changed. Not just inside her, but around her. The symbols beneath her feet shattered. Not cracked. Shattered. As if rejecting her decision. Or reacting to it. The creature's expression twisted into something darker, more dangerous than before. And for the first time, it looked afraid. The moment the symbols shattered, the clearing didn't just go still. It broke. A deep, violent pulse rippled outward from Nivara, not explosive like before, but controlled, deliberate, as if something inside her had finally aligned instead of fighting itself. The air shifted instantly, the heavy pressure lifting just enough to breathe again, but not disappearing. It changed. It obeyed. Nivara stood at the center of it, her chest rising slowly, her body no longer trembling under the weight of her power. It was still there, vast, dangerous, but no longer tearing her apart. It moved with her, responded to her. The forest seemed to exhale, the unnatural tension loosening its grip as the twisted energy that had filled the clearing began to fracture. The creature staggered back a step, its form flickering more violently now, unstable in a way it hadn't been before. "What have you done?" it demanded, its voice no longer calm, no longer controlled. Nivara didn't answer immediately. Because for the first time, she wasn't reacting. She was deciding. Valian didn't move at first. He watched her. Carefully. Not with fear. Not with control. But with something far more dangerous, respect. Nivara felt the bond between them shift again, not tightening, not pulling, but settling into something balanced. Equal. The realization hit quietly but deeply. He wasn't trying to claim her anymore. He wasn't trying to restrain her. He was waiting, giving her the choice he had spoken about. Her gaze met his, steady now despite everything, and something unspoken passed between them, understanding, fragile but real. Then Valian did something no one in the world would have believed if they hadn't seen it. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself to one knee. The movement was controlled, intentional, undeniable. Not submission, not weakness, but acknowledgement. "You choose your path," he said, his voice steady, carrying across the clearing with quiet power. "Not me, not them." Nivara's breath caught slightly, her chest tightening at the weight of it. No alpha bode, not like this, not to anyone, and yet he did. The creature let out a harsh, disbelieving sound, its form twisting violently as anger replaced whatever control it had left. "You would kneel to her," it spat, its voice layered with something sharp and furious. "To that!" Nivara felt the insult, but it didn't land the way it once would have. It didn't cut. It didn't break. Because now she understood something she hadn't before. Power didn't come from what others called you. It came from what you chose to become. Slowly, she stepped forward, the energy around her shifting with each movement, responding, aligning. The creature reacted instantly, its body tensing as if preparing to strike, but something held it back, something in her presence. "You said I belonged to you," Nivara said, her voice calm, steady despite the storm that still lingered beneath it. "You were wrong." The words settled into the clearing with finality. The creature's eyes narrowed, its expression darkening. "You think you can reject what you are?" it hissed. Nivara shook her head slightly. "No," she replied. "I'm choosing what I am." The air changed again. Not violently, but completely. Nivara lifted her hand slowly, the power inside her responding instantly, not chaotic, not unstable, but focused. Controlled. The same energy that had once tried to break her now moved with precision, bending to her will instead of overwhelming it. The creature flinched, actually flinched for the first time since it appeared. "You don't understand what you're doing," it said, its voice lower now, edged with something unfamiliar. Caution. I understand enough, Nivara replied. Enough to know I don't need you to define me. The energy in her hand pulsed once, sharp and clean, cutting through the corrupted air like a blade. The creatures surrounding the clearing hesitated, their movements faltering as if reacting to something they couldn't resist. Nivara stepped closer again, her gaze unwavering. You hunted me because of what I could become, she continued. But you forgot something. The creature's eyes locked onto hers, tension snapping tight. What? Nivara's voice dropped slightly. I get to decide who I become. The strike wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. But it was absolute. The energy surged forward from her hand in a single, focused wave, cutting straight through the creature before it could react. Its body froze mid-motion, its expression shifting from anger to shock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the distortion around it shattered completely, its form collapsing inward as the unnatural energy holding it together broke apart. Silence followed, heavy, final. The remaining creatures recoiled instantly, their movements losing coordination as whatever controlled them fractured with the fall of their leader. One by one, they retreated into the forest, disappearing as quickly as they had come. The clearing grew still again, but this time it felt different. Not wrong, not heavy, just quiet. Nivara's hand lowered slowly, her breathing steady as the last traces of energy settled beneath her skin. It was still there, always would be, but now it was hers. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Nivara turned. Fully. Toward Valian. He was still on one knee, his gaze steady, unwavering, waiting, not demanding. The bond between them pulsed softly now, no longer overwhelming, no longer pulling, but present. Real. Nivara stepped closer, her movements slow, deliberate, until she stood just in front of him. Her heart beat steadily now, not racing, not panicked. Certain. She studied him for a moment, the power, the control, the strength, and the choice he had made. To kneel, to wait, to trust. You said I choose, she said quietly. Valian nodded once. You do. Silence stretched for a second, then Nivara exhaled softly. Then I choose this, she said. And she reached for him. Not as something owned. Not as something claimed. But as something chosen. And this time, the bond didn't snap. It settled. Like it had always been meant to. If Nivara had chosen power over connection, everything would have burned. But she didn't. She chose herself. So tell me, what would you have done in her place? And if you want more stories like this, where the weakest become unstoppable, stay with me.